Woohoo! It's the last video! This is it, we're finally at the last video of the series. Actually, I'm saying the last video, but it's probably not the case because I'm probably going to continue adding some content here and there, but by the end of today's video, we'll pretty much have done everything I planned to do at the beginning of the series. So yeah, today we're going to add a main menu to our game to switch between all the different levels, and then we're going to package the application to see if it works. So let's get to it. So in Unreal, the first thing we're gonna do is create the level for the main menu. So let's go in the map and right click and create a new level, which I'm gonna name L_main menu, and open the level. We're gonna add a few objects in there. And also while we're here, I'm going to rename the entry level because it's more a debug level than an entry level now. The entry is gonna be the main menu. So I'm just going to rename it L_debug instead of L_entry. Perfect. And for the objects we need to add in the main menu level, well, we don't need much, we just need the player start. So I'm just going to drag it inside the world and center it right in the middle, right here. Everything else is going to be controlled by the widget, so let's go create the widget for the main menu. So in the blueprints, I'm gonna go in my other and create a new folder right here, which I'm gonna name main menu. And inside that folder, I'm going to create two things. One, a blueprint actor, so blueprint class actor, which I'm gonna name BP_main menu. That one we can drop it in the level anywhere, doesn't really matter. And then we're gonna need a widget, so in user interface, widget blueprint, which I'm gonna name W_main menu. And then we can save both of those and we can open both of those also. And we're gonna start with the widget, and this is how mine is going to look like. Looks like there's a lot of things in there, but it's actually not that complicated. So my menu, under that I have my first component, which is an overlay as usual. And then I have a border, which I named the border opacity because we're going to tweak the opacity of the component just like that to make the menu fade in and fade out at the beginning of the game. That's why I named it border_opacity. And also here on the right, you can see that in my brush, I've used one of my spell icons for my border. And the reason behind that is just so I wanted to have this little rounded corner right here. It's probably not the best way to do that, but that's how I did it and it seems to work. So now my main menu has a nice rounded corner around the edges and I think it looks way better than without it. And then under that I have a simple grid panel that contains all the buttons for all my different levels. So a simple grid panel, and then inside it I have first a button for my debug level. Here it is. I named it the debug map, and all my buttons are made the same way. So it's a simple button on the top, and then under it I have a text component that says the name of the level we want to open. So all my buttons are the same. Under that I have a spacer to have a little bit of room, and then I have another text component that says that all these levels right here are combats levels, the one we created in the previous video. And then I have buttons for all my different levels. Here they are for all my different combat scenarios that we created. And then if I go down a little bit more, I have another spacer right here, another text that says these are the overworld levels, the square, hexagon, and triangle. And finally, I have another spacer and a button to be able to quit the game. And that's it. It's super simple. Just a bunch of buttons that we can click on to load all kinds of different levels. And since we want to be able to click on those buttons, well, we need to implement the unclicked event just like that. Go back in the designer, do it for all the other buttons. Implement the unclick, go back in the designer, implement the unclick, go back in the designer over and over and over. And here we go, I created all the different events for all my different buttons, and there's a lot of them, so yeah, there's a lot of events. And all those events are going to end up calling the same other event to say which level we want to open. And that new event, I'm going to create it, let's say right here, new custom event, which I named open level right here, and we are feeding it the level name of the level we want to open. And then we're going to call that event with all my button click right here. So when we click on button_debug map, we're going to open the level L_debug, which is the same exact name as we have in the content browser, L_debug. Make sure it's the same exact name, otherwise it won't work. So here, if I click on debug map, it's going to open L_debug, and I'm going to do the same thing for all my other levels. So when I click on fair duel, it's going to open L_combat fair duel, chicken hunt, L_combat chicken hunt, so slimy, flying cheating, and the other ones also. So all my button combats are going to open the proper level combat. Here they are, and then we have the overworld level to open right here. So we're going to do the exact same thing, open the L overworld square this time, hexagon and triangle to open all three levels. And finally we have the button quit. That one, well, we don't have a level to open when we want to quit the game, but we're still going to call the open level function, specifying that we want to quit the game. We're going to react a little bit differently in that case. We're going to do some different logic in the same function, so everything goes into the same place. Perfect. So these are all the open levels. Now we can go back at the top right here and do the logic of this new event. And it's actually super simple. We just have to first check if we want to quit the game. And if so, well, we're just going to quit the game. That's simple. And then if we don't want to quit the game, then we can simply open the right level, which is the level name we just received as input. And that's it. Now we should be ready to test all that. We just need to create the widget in the game, and that's going to be inside the BP main menu in the event graph, and inside the begin play, I'm just going to create the widget main menu, add it into a new variable that I have right here, and add it to the viewport. Perfect. Now let's compile this, go back in the level main menu and press play. If it works, yes, we have the menu that is appearing in the game. And now if I click on the debug map, it should open the right level, my debug level. Perfect. Stop, play again. Now we can open the overworlds, let's say. Okay, yeah, it seems to work. I'm in the overworld and I can control the units. That's pretty good. Now if I try one of my combat, it opens the combat and it seems to work, but I have a bunch of errors if I press stop. Oh, okay. Let's see what is happening. Okay, after a bit of investigation and a bunch of trial and errors, I figured out that the problem was inside this scenario, the combat scenario right here in the construction script, because I tried to disconnect this and it seemed to work. So yeah, I think the problem is that the construction script is executed before first the player respawns, so we are not considered to be in-game, so that's running. And since that's running, it's trying to spawn the grid, and the grid is not properly initialized yet, so it causes a bunch of issues, and that's just a big mess. I'm not sure if that error would also happen in a newer version of Unreal, because I know that the child actor were improved by a lot, so maybe they also fixed that issue, but whatever. In my case, I'm just going to fix my function that detects if I'm in the game or not, because there's clearly a problem here that I can control, the other one I cannot, but this one I can. So I'm going to go inside my is-in-game function right here, and I'm going to add another check, because right now the player controller is not yet valid at the beginning of the level. So what I'm going to do is just also check if the game mode is valid. So just like that, I'm getting the game mode, checking if it is valid, and if either the game mode or the player controller are valid, then I'm going to consider myself to be in game. Perfect. That should fix the issue. So I'm just going to close all that, play the game. Now if I try to open one of those levels, I don't have any error anymore in the log and I can move around. Perfect. I can stop, play again, try to load another level. It seems to work also. Stop, play again, try to load another level, and they are all pretty good. That's good. The last thing we didn't test is the quit game button. So if I click on that button, it should quit the game. So hey, it works. That's good. And that means that the whole main menu seems to work perfectly. So it works, but I would say it's a little bit boring right now. Everything's black. We just have a bunch of buttons in the screen, and that's not nice. So what I'm going to do is just load some different levels in the background, so we have something to look at while we're deciding which level we want to play. So let's just do stuff for now. Go in the sub level and add everything in there. So the hexagon, lighting, square, and triangle, all of them. And we're going to toggle them on and off based on the timer. So we're going to, let's say, for example, display the square level first, and then it's going to display the hexagon, and then the triangle, and then it's going to go back to the square, and then go back to the hexagon again and again and again until the player decided which level he wants to play. So, okay, to do that, I'm going to go in my main menu right here, and at the end of the begin play right here, I'm going to add a little something. So we're going to load the level square, wait a little bit, so let's say 5 seconds, and then unload the level square. Then once the level square is unloaded, we're going to load the next level, which is the hexagon. We're going to wait a little bit and then unload it, and finally do the same thing, load the triangle, wait a little bit, and then unload the triangle. And once we're done with the triangle, well, we go back all the way to the beginning. We reload the square, make it visible, hide it, load the hexagon, make it visible, wait, and hide it, triangle again and again and again until the player is made his decision. So now if I compile and go play, I should now, okay, I don't have the lighting. It's because my lighting level is not always loaded. So let's just stop and change streaming method, always loaded, just like that. And now if I press play, here we go. Now I have a square level in the background. If I wait 5 seconds, it should switch to the hexagon, just like that. I have an hexagon level, and then I have a triangle level. And once we're done with it, it should go back to the square and loop indefinitely. Here we go, until the player chooses which level he wants to play. So let's say in my case, I want to play the chicken hunt. Here we go. Now it loads the right level. But here, as you can see, the transition between the different levels is a little bit aggressive because we're simply hiding the previous level and loading the new one, so it pops really aggressively, and I really don't like that. So instead, what we're going to do is just add a black square to hide everything, so it's just going to fade out everything to black and then fade back in once the level is loaded, so it should hide the transition, which is a little bit annoying right now. So let's just press stop. We're going to go do that inside the widget, the main menu, and we're going to use a new image. So add a new image in the overlay right here. I'm going to place it behind all the buttons because we still want to see them, and I'm going to make it use the whole space, and I'm going to make it all black. Here we go. So now we have a nice image that is hiding everything that is happening in the scene. Now we're going to animate that because it's not always going to be visible. So create a new animation right here, which I name anim_show hide background, and I'm going to add a new track for my image. And the thing we're going to animate is the render opacity right here. So let's just add a new keyframe at the beginning of the animation, and then all the way at the end of the animation, I'm going to add a new keyframe for the render opacity, but that one's going to be 10% visible. So 0.1 right here, keyframe. Here we go. So now the background is going to fade between all black and a tiny little bit black, just because I think it's a little bit nicer than having it completely hidden. Perfect. Now let's compile that and go in the graph to play the animation. I'm going to play it right here above the open level right here. I'm going to add those two events. Here they are. So when I want to show the background, I'm going to play the animation forward, which is going to hide the background image, which is going to reveal the background. So that's why it's called show background. And then we have the hide background, which is going to hide the background by displaying the black square over it. Okay, so now we have those two events. So I'm playing the animation forward and reverse, and now we just have to go call those two events inside the BP main menu right before we are unloading the level and loading the new one. And that's how I decided to do that. So I'm just going to display the background once the level square is loaded. So we're loading the level square. At the beginning, everything is black, so we're not going to see the pop when the level appears. Then after that, we're going to display the background, which is the level square. So that's going to hide the black square that is hiding everything, which is going to reveal the level square. Wait 10 seconds. And once the delay is done, we're going to ask the menu to hide the background, which is going to fade everything to black once again after the other delay, which is 5 seconds, which is the fade duration. We're going to unload the level square because everything is black now. So we can unload the level square, load the level hexagon. And once it's done loading, we're going to do the same thing, display the background. So hide the black square, wait a little bit, and then show the black square once again. Once the delay is done, we can now hide the level hexagon and load the triangle because everything is black, and we're going to do the exact same thing once again. So we hide the black square, wait a little bit, show the black square once again, and then we can proceed with the level loading again and again and again, and that should make the transition way smoother. So let's go see how it looks in the game. By default, everything is black. Now it's fading from black. That's pretty nice. We're gonna wait, let's say 10 seconds, because that's what I said. After the delay, we're waiting 10 seconds, and once the 10 seconds is over, here we go. Now it's fading back to black, and now it should load the hexagon. We can see it on the top left corner right here. So now it loaded the hexagon, and now once it's done loading, it's fading back in, and then we can wait another extra 10 seconds, and after that it's done, it's going to fade out. Here we go, and it's going to load the triangle right here, top left corner, and then it's going to fade back in. Here we go. So now all the transitions are way smoother than before. But actually, when I press play, there's still a flash at the beginning that is a little bit annoying, and that's just because if I go back in my main menu here, if I close my animation, so if I click away from it, we can see that the default value of my image is at 0.1, so I'm just going to make it 1 by default, so everything should be black by default. Now if I play, here we go, I don't have a pop at the beginning of the game, now everything is black from the start. That's pretty good. But there's still another thing I'd like to fix. If I press play now, all my buttons are completely visible by default. So at the beginning of the game, the background is fading in, but the buttons are not. And I think that's a little bit annoying. I would like to have my button fading at the same time as the background. So what I'm going to do is go in my widget, the main menu, and I'm going to animate the opacity of my border opacity that I have right here. So let's just create a new animation for it. So I named it anim_fade in. I'm going to add a new track for my border opacity right here. And in there, I'm going to animate the render opacity that I have just right here. So by default, it's going to be 0 by default, add a keyframe, and then I'm going to go all the way at the end of the animation, so at 5 seconds, and I'm going to make the opacity back to 1. Here we go. So now the buttons are going to fade in just like that at the beginning of the game. Ooh, that's nice. Now I'm gonna go compile that, and I'm gonna go in the graph to play the animation, and we're gonna do that right here in the construct. So at the beginning, I'm just going to make sure that the render opacity of my border is completely hidden, because in the designer we still want to see something when the animation is not playing. So when I click away from the animation, we still want to see something. So the border opacity by default is equal to 1 in the editor, but when we start the game, I want to make sure that the border is completely hidden, and then we're going to play the animation right away. Perfect. Now if I go back in the game, I press play, everything's black from the beginning, and then everything's fading in, and that's pretty nice. I think it looks way better than before. Now the next step will be that if I click on one of those buttons, instead of just going straight to the level, it would be nice to have a fade out. So it's going to fade back to black before loading the next level, and I think it will look way better than just directly skipping to the next level just like that. So let's go do that. Let's go back in the main menu, and we're going to add a few new steps when we are opening the level right here. And to do that, well, we need a bit of room, so I'm just going to give myself a little bit of room just like that. And then since we're going to wait for the animation, I'm going to add myself a little do once right here, because we don't want the player to be able to click on the buttons multiple times. We're only going to trigger the animation once, and then it's going to load the right level afterwards. And now to play the animation, well, it's super simple. We just have to do a play animation reverse on both of our animations. So first we have the anim show hide background, which is going to hide the background because we're playing it in reverse. We can set the playback speed to 5 because otherwise it will be a little bit too slow when the player clicks on something. We want it to be reactive. 5 seconds is a bit too long, so I'm playing it 5 times faster, just so it's way faster. But there's a little bug in the current version I'm using, so I have to do a set playback speed right afterwards, because the playback speed we set in the play animation reverse right here doesn't seem to work in the current version I'm using, so that's why I'm just doing a set playback speed right after that. It doesn't cost anything, it's not a problem, so let's just leave it there. Why not? And maybe it's going to be fixed in future versions. Maybe, maybe not. We don't know. Actually, I don't know because I didn't test it. Anyway, then we're gonna do the exact same thing for the second animation. So the anim fade in right here, we're going to also play it reverse to hide all the buttons. Playback speed to 5, playback speed to 5 right here, and then we can simply load the right level once the animations are loaded. And since we are setting the playback speed to 5 now, the animation take only 1 second instead of 5, so we can simply wait a little delay right here, wait 1 second, and then once the delay is done, now we can open the level we want to play. And that's it. Now if we compile and save, if we go back in the level, now everything should fade in as usual. That's pretty nice. And then if I click on any of my button, everything fading out, and now we are loading the right level. Now we can try again, play, fade out, and then load the right level, and then play again. Click on one of the button, fade out, and then it loads the right level. Yeah, that's pretty nice, and that's way smoother than before. But now we still have an issue. If we play any of our levels, so let's say the triangle overworld right here, there's no way to go back in the main menu. I can just play this level as many times as I want, and it's pretty nice, but I cannot go back in the main menu, and that's not good. Actually, I have to stop and play again, and now it reopens the main menu, and now I can select, let's say, those levels right here. It starts the combat, and then I can play the combat, but I cannot never go back in the main menu, and that's not nice. So we have to add ways to go back in the main menu, and actually this scenario is actually the simplest way to do, because once we're done with the combat, in the combat scenario, we're simply going to go back in the main menu automatically, and that's the simplest thing to do. So let's just start with that one, I guess. So let's stop and go in the scenarios and go in the combat scenario right here. I'm gonna go in my event graph at the end right here, after the combat is ended right here. We were starting a new combat automatically, but I think we won't do that anymore. We will directly go back in the main menu instead. So let's just disconnect this right here and open the level main menu just like that instead. So we're not going to start a new combat, we're just going to go back in the main menu. Now let's go back in the game to see how it looks. So let's say I'm going to play this game, doesn't really matter. I can move around, play the combat as usual, and once we're done with the combat, it should reload the main menu, and that's pretty nice. I can do that as many times as I want. I can play the game, stop the game, and that's pretty nice. We have a way out. That's always good. But now we cannot do the exact same thing in the overworld and the debug map, because in both those scenarios we can trigger as many combats as we want, and we don't always want to go back to the main menu at the end of every combat. So instead, I'm just going to create myself one new button that we're going to place, let's say, somewhere in the bottom left corner or something like that, that is going to give the player the option to click on it and go back in the main menu manually. So let's do that. So in our main menu folder right here, I'm going to create myself one new user interface, a widget blueprint, which I'm going to name W_back to main menu. It's really just going to be a button that leads us back to the main menu. Now I can open it, and I'm going to add all the components I need, just like that. So I have an overlay as usual, and then inside it I have a border that I can zoom on it right here. Here it is. I have a nice border. Inside it I have a button for my back to main menu action, and then I have a text written main menu on it. Now I can compile and implement the event for the button, unclicked event. And we're going to do the exact same thing. So we're going to open the level main menu just like that. Perfect. So now the widget is created. And now to use the widget, we need to add it in two places. So first in the debug menu levels and also in the overworld scenario levels. Let's start with the debug menu. I'm just going to directly add it inside the widget debug menu. Why not? So it's right here. I'm going to search for back to main menu just like that and drop it into my overlay. Place it in the bottom left corner just like that. Here we go. Now I have my button back to main menu inside my widget debug menu. Perfect. That one was simple. Now we're going to go back here and we're going to go inside this scenario overworld right here, BP overworld scenario. And in the begin play, before doing everything else, I'm just going to add this widget on the viewport. So I'm just going to do that in the begin play right here, create the widget back to main menu, add it to the viewport, and then we can do the rest of the logic just like that. Perfect. Now, if I go back in the game, I should now have ways to go back to the main menu for all my different levels. So in the debug map, here we go. I now have the main menu button right here in the bottom left corner. So when I want, I can go back to the main menu, and then same thing for the other one. So in those scenarios right here, oh, that one was happening at the end of the combat, and that seems to still work. So that's good. And then in my overworld, I now have my main menu button right here in the bottom left corner, which I can click to go back to the main menu. That's pretty good. But there's still one last little problem with that button, is that it's always visible even if I'm in combat. So if I start a combat right now, I now have my main menu button, and then under that I have my end combat button, and that's not good. We don't want to have the main menu visible when we are in combat, only when the combats are over. So I'm just going to stop, go back in my widget back to main menu, and add a few conditions so we can hide this button while we are in combat. And it's pretty straightforward. In the construct, I'm just going to get a reference to the combat system that I have right here in the variable. Then I can use that combat system to hook myself to the callbacks that are called when we start the combat or end the combat. It's going to call this event right here. And then we can use that event to set the visibility of our widget in the viewport. So if we are in combat, we're going to make the widget collapse, so completely hidden. Otherwise, it's going to be visible. Perfect. So now the widget should be hidden in combat. Let's press play. I'm going to test in the debug map first to see and make sure that the main menu button still works, and it still works. That's good. Then in combat, so we can see that the end combat still works. We didn't change that, so it should not matter. And then in the overworld, if I go in my hexagon level right here, I now have the main menu button. That's pretty good. And if I start a combat, okay, I just noticed that the grid was completely broken. Okay, let's try to fix that. But then I have my end combat button. I don't have the main menu button anymore because I'm in combat. And now once the combat is over, I have my main menu combat button. And if I click on it, it goes back all the way to the beginning of the game. And now I can quit the game if I want to. And I just found the problem of why the grid wasn't working properly, and it is just because of the grid shape right here. It was set to none like it is right now, but it was still generated, so I didn't do like hexagon, none, hexagon, none. So the grid was generated, it was hidden for some reason, I don't know why, but it was generated. So when we are trying to generate a new grid on top of an already generated grid, it causes some issues, and that's not good. So we really have to do a none twice. So hexagon, none. Now the grid is hidden for real, it's completely hidden and not generated. And now if I move around with my units, I can start a combat, and now the grid is generated properly and it doesn't cause any issues. So that's pretty good. And now if I click on my main menu, it goes back to the main menu and I can go back in my level if I want to. Perfect. So now the loop seems to work perfectly. And now, before we try to package our game and end today's video, there's just one last little thing I'd like to add. If I go in one of my combats, any combats, doesn't really matter, we can see that we don't have access to the tactical mode nor the speed of the game, so we cannot make it play faster or display the tactical mode. And I really like to have those options in a tactical game, so I'm just going to add them back inside the combat combat widget real quick. So let's press stop and go in the combat widget. So in blueprint, core combat, widgets and a w_combat, I'm going to add those options, let's say right here on the left, right beside end combat. I'm just going to wrap the end combat button in an horizontal box, and inside the horizontal box I'm going to add those options right here. So I have first a checkbox that tells me if I want to use the tactical mode or not. Under the checkbox I have two buttons, one to say that I want to use time 1 speed, and then on the right I have time 3 speed. Perfect. So now I can compile, go in the graph to do the few modifications we need. So here we need to implement the event when the checkbox is checked, so right here, and then we need the button times 1 speed unclicked and the button times 3 speed, just like that. And I'm actually also going to need the event destruct, so event destruct, here it is. And for the logic, it's pretty simple. If we check the checkbox to say that we want to be in tactical, well, we have to set is tactical inside the grid visual. That's it. That's as simple as that. Then when we click on the button to set the speed of the game to time 1, well, we just have to execute the command slow-mo 1. When we click on the button times 3, we're going to execute the console command slow-mo 3. And then when we destroy this widget, so when we are getting out of combat, this widget is going to be destroyed. Then we want to restore everything back to what it was before. So we're going to restore the time to 1, and also we're going to turn off the tactical mode, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Set the speed of the game to the normal speed and disable the tactical mode, and that's it. Now if I compile and go see in the game, I should now have access to those options. So I'm going to start, let's say, this combat right here, doesn't really matter. I can enable the tactical mode if I want to, and that's pretty nice, and then I can move around. If it's too slow, I can make it faster by speeding up the speed of the game, just like that, and that's pretty nice. I really like it. I can toggle tactical mode also, toggle the speed. It seems to work pretty fine. And if I end my combat, now I'm back at normal speed and out of tactical mode, and that's exactly what we want. That's pretty good. And it's finally time to do the last step, which is the packaging. So to package our game, we're gonna go in the project settings first. So edit the project settings, and we're gonna go inside the maps and mode category because we renamed the level entry that we had before. Now it's the main menu level we want to use. So for the editor starter map and the game default map, we're going to select the L main menu, which is right here. And right here. Here we go. So now my main menu is set up properly. And there's another thing I would like to change, and it is the FPS of the game. You don't have to do that, but in my case, I'm going to search for smooth frame rate and check the little checkbox right here. By default, Unreal doesn't cap the FPS of your game, so in my case, the game was running on my computer when I tried packaging it. The game was running at 800 FPS and my computer wanted to die pretty much because it was trying to run as fast as it could, and that's not really a good thing. So yeah. Since we don't need to render 800 frames per second, it's better to cap the FPS, and that's what I'm doing right here by checking the smooth FPS checkbox. It's going to cap the FPS between 22 and 62 FPS. And that's it, now we're ready to package the game. So let's go back in main menu, file, package project for Windows 64, and I'm going to select a folder and then start the package. Now we have to wait until it's over. Here we go, it completed successfully. Now I can go in my Explorer and open the folder I just created, and the application is right here. Let's run it to see how it goes. It opened in full screen in my other view, so I'm just going to move it right here. Here we go. If your game is in full screen and you want to minimize it, the shortcut is F11, so you can do that as many times as you want to toggle between full screen and windowed mode. And now we're gonna test our game, so let's open the debug map. We're gonna start with that one, and I guess it seemed to work. We can toggle the grid. It seems to work fine. Everything seems to work as before. That's pretty good. Okay, that's good. Go back in the main menu. Let's try the overworld now. So this is the overworld. I can move my units around. I can start a combat. I should be able to. Yes, it seems to work. I can move around, cast my spell and everything. That's good. And the combat. Perfect. Now I'm gonna go back in the main menu, and the last thing we have to test is the combat scenario. So let's open one of them, and yeah, there's a bug there. I tested it before recording, and yes, we're pretty much stuck. The combat doesn't seem to start for some reason. I don't even have my user interface, and that's not great because I cannot close the game. Yay! Okay, let's just quit the application, and we're gonna go see in Unreal what the problem is. And after investigating the combat scenario, I saw that the problem was in there, and it's actually because of the begin play. We are trying to start the combat way too fast, I think. I think it doesn't seem to work properly when we start the combat on the first frame. I think it's still a child actor issue, and it's probably fixed in a newer version of the engine. So in your case, if you don't have that bug, don't do what I'm gonna do right now because it's not clean. But in my case, since I'm using for the 25 and that bug is still there, I'm adding a little delay right here just so we don't start the combat on the first frame. That is going to make sure that all my components, all my child actor components are going to be initialized properly and ready to be used before starting the combat. And that should fix our issue. So let's compile and then we can package the game once again. So package for Windows, here we go. Perfect, now let's run the application once again to see if it worked. I'm going to move it back on this screen right here so you can see. Now I have all my combat scenarios and I'm gonna try to play one of them, and now it works. I'm able to move the units around and the combat. If I want to, I'm brought back to the main menu, which I can then select another combat scenario and play around if I want, and it seems to work and it's so much better now. Yay, because it works. Because when it doesn't, well, it's just not good. Anyway, now we're able to play all of our maps. That's very nice. So I guess this is it. This was the final episode of the tactical series. Actually, the final episode for now, because I'm going to continue uploading videos in which I'm going to continue adding all the different feature requests you guys are asking me, because there's a lot of them and I still have a lot of content. So why not continuing the series? I think it will be a good idea. And actually, since I have a lot of requests, I'm going to probably do a poll somewhere. And then once it's done, I don't know when exactly, I'm going to add it in the description, and then you're gonna be able to vote on which feature you'd like to see first. And then I'm going to use this list to decide which feature to do. So yeah, the list is going to contain all the features that were requested during the year. And if your feature, if you want to have something that is not on the list, just tell me. You can write me on Discord or in the comments or whatever, and then I'm going to add it to the list and people will be able to vote for it. But anyway, that's gonna be it for this one. Thanks a lot for the support once again, and I'm gonna see you in the next one. Bye bye! Oh wow, I can't believe it's over.